So every now and then, I like to return to Path of Exile because it's a bit of an addiction for me. It's a really, really good game, but I try sometimes to fight the urge to come back to it because I know that if I do, I'm gonna likely disappear off the face of the earth for like 3 months. But here we are, because I wanted to check out the newest league for Path of Exile called Delve. And for those who don't know, the league system in Path of Exile is sort of like a realm, or a temporary challenge kind of setting that you can set when you make a character. They have separate sort of shards of servers from your other characters, and therefore they have their own stash and things like that. But they are a sort of time-limited way almost to test new mechanics, you could say. When there's a big expansion or some sort of new large addition that Grinding Gear have been working on to put in the game, they don't usually just straight add it all to the base game. They make a challenge league out of some of it. And you could kind of consider the challenge leagues to be a way to experience the newest stuff while also sort of testing it. Think of it as the like building a wall. The brick at the very top is sort of the newest, highest brick that contains everything below it as well, but nothing above it yet. That's basically a challenge league. And the brick just below that, the second to highest one, is the most stable one, because it's got the support of the entire wall. It just doesn't have all of the absolute newest bleeding edge stuff yet. And when you put another brick on top of that one, well, then that one becomes the highest one, and the previously second highest one becomes the stable one. And that's basically how challenge leagues work, because eventually a lot of the stuff that's in the league after it ends will come back in some form to the base game. This isn't always true, but usually the stuff that is really, really heavily liked and has a lot of work put into it and it just lasts a while, tends to, after a couple of months of balancing and listening to feedback that they received when it was a challenge league, will come back and actually be a part of the main game for everyone. So the standard league will have it, and any future challenge leagues will also have it in addition to the newest stuff. So Delve is all about diving through the Azurite Mines, as it's called. It's a new location added specifically for this mode, and it goes on infinitely. It is a completely procedural, infinite area. As you can see here, it's made up of various nodes, and each node contains different rewards. And the basic idea is you're meant to travel through these areas to the nodes and get their rewards while trying to live, because the mines are a very, very hostile place. The darkness will kill you, in fact. If you stay in the darkness for more than a couple of seconds, you will get a pretty much unhealable amount of damage. It's a stacking debuff that decreases your health faster and faster and faster the longer you stay in the dark. And that's basically what, as you can see there, that sort of purple aura around the screen means you're in the darkness, move. And that's basically the way of making these just really hostile and really difficult to explore, but very rewarding to explore, because the actual amount of rewards down here is ridiculous. You can get so much good stuff, and Delve's actually accessible from the very beginning of the game. All you have to do is get to the coast for the first time and talk to the NPC that actually governs the Delve content. His name is Nico the Mad. And once you're there, you can start gathering the fuel that you need to actually make delves. Even if you're like level 3 at that point, you can still do it. You probably just won't be able to go too deep. So I mentioned the fuel, and that's sort of what the mode kind of centers around at a certain point in terms of what you're doing in the rest of the game in order to make sure you can do this. You have to find these things, the stuff, I suppose, called voltaxic sulfite. And it takes the form of sort of earthen ore-like deposits jutting out of the ground. Or if you're in certain areas, places like, well, they're in chests instead. As you saw there, it was a treasure chest, because it doesn't necessarily make sense to have a large sort of vein of stuff jutting out of the ground when you're in like the second floor of a tower, for instance. So it'll be in a chest instead. But that's just a cosmetic difference. They give you the same amount for their level, and the higher level of a zone you're in, when you find these deposits, the more it gives you. From, like 7 or 8 in the very beginning, up to easily getting like 33 or more by the time you're like mid-level. So you can actually only carry a certain amount of this stuff. You have a gauge that it adds into, and you can carry 50 at the start of the game, but this can be upgraded, and every delve costs a certain amount, dependent on both the depth of the delve and how distant you're going away from the node that you're currently on. So the same distance will cost more at higher depths and will have higher level enemies and better rewards. There are also just better, more difficult enemies in general that are, better at killing you horribly. As you go lower, they're not just a higher level, there are also new varieties of them. There are also biomes, interestingly enough, underground. The entire mine isn't just a mine, it goes through all sorts of various tunnels and different things, including underground cities and the like. So you're not going to be stuck in one appearance of an area the entire time. Rather, you're going to actually be traveling through various underground biomes, each with their own enemies, and I suppose events for you to actually conquer. And the way it generally works is, as you can see in the background, you will select a new place that you haven't been to yet that is directly connected to a place you have been to go, and the crawler here will start moving. And probably the best part about this is it's not an escort quest-like section. The crawler doesn't have a health gauge, it's not targeted by enemies, you don't have to worry about it getting damaged. What it does do is move ever forward towards where you selected, laying a rope down behind it, and that's important later. It also has a source of quite bright light on it that you need to stay within the bounds of if you don't want to horrifically, die or get eaten by the Grue or whatever happens when you go into the darkness. And when you actually arrive at a node like this, one of two things will happen. Either there will be a very significant number of enemies around it for you to kill, and then once you kill all of them, usually several rares will pop up. The event will end and a whole bunch of rewards will drop around the crawler, and then you can also loot the locked boxes of stuff around the node, depending on what kind it is. If they contain skill gems or armor or weapons or who knows what. Other times, there is instead an event like this, where you have to do specific things around this area to actually successfully unlock the boxes and get all the loot. This one involves, going around and poisoning this meat, and some of it's in the darkness, so you need some flares to get there. You can carry flares and dynamite to actually help explore the area. And as you can see, well, the actual rewards are really, really good. You can get some crazy stuff, and it's definitely worth actually taking part in this content, even if you're just doing it on a kind of side basis. You can also get this stuff called azurite down there, that is the azurite mines after all, and you can use it to upgrade various aspects of your delve life. Things like buying flares and dynamite, increasing the amount you can hold and how effective they are, and most importantly, how much sulfite you can hold, your resistance to the darkness at various depths, how quickly it will kill you, and the average radius of light around you and how your light and other light sources will, be able to pierce the darkness and give you larger safe havens. Now this is a special area. This is called a city. They are marked underground with these squares of sort of influence that show you that it's not just a standard node, it's something very different. This is a Vol city, deep underground, that has its own special type of event and very good rewards. This is actually the second try at this one, because the first time, this spot right here slaughtered me horribly because I didn't expect everything in the universe to actually come and attack me. But they did. So this time, I was a little bit more prepared for this above dungeon section, and was able to, successfully beat them back and unlock the area, which was nice. But yeah, these cities seem like they're kind of meant to be done ideally with multiple people, I think. Not how I was doing it, but that's, what happened. And it turns out that they're really freaking hard. And I actually didn't know what to do with this one. I failed it, basically, because this is the first time I'd ever seen one, so I decided to, film it and go in. As you can see there, a city biome is what it's called. And when you do the above biome section, you get some loot and stuff like that, but it also unlocks the actual chamber underneath. And this is where I screwed up, because the chamber underneath is ridiculous, and I don't know what to do. I think I figured it out post me dying. Basically, you come down here and it's quite dark, lit with all these red sort of lights, and there are just tons of enemies with lots of health and damage, because they're Vol. And I thought, okay, I need to clear out these chambers at first, but it turns out no, because the enemies seem to be infinitely spawning. I quickly found out they just kept coming, and I could never actually stop the tide, so I was like, alright, well obviously I need to not stay here then, or else I'm going to get overwhelmed if I sit still for too long. And then I saw that up there, in the sort of north area of this dungeon, I suppose, was basically the rewards, the chests for the special stuff that's down here. So I instead tried to run while only attacking what was directly in front of me, and that failed miserably, because as it turns out, they spawn really, really quickly, and in between these islands of red light is actually a lot of darkness that kills you really fast. And I didn't know that, so I was not prepared to actually well navigate this, and died as a result, because I didn't know what to do. Now I think I understand what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to get down there and very quickly start running towards the loot while dropping flares to give you islands of light, and only just killing the enemies that are directly in your way so you don't get too quickly overwhelmed, and get your loot and get out of there. And I think that's what you're actually meant to do. So now that I know that, I have some more preparation, I guess you could say, to do the next time I actually find one of those. I need to have a lot more maximum flares to make sure I have enough and things like that. So I just clearly was not equipped or prepared at all to do that, but it was the first one I saw, so I wanted to try it, see what it was. There are lots of other different types of nodes down here, things like special previously only Challenge League stuff, like breaches and what else is there? There's a bunch of stuff like that. Harbingers, things of that nature, things that are only in maps now and stuff like that. You can actually find them in nodes down here to actually challenge, which is cool. This also introduces a socketable currency. Now, the currency system for Path of Exile would take an entire video just to explain the nature of, but basically these are items that affect items that you actually have. You use them on stuff in your inventory and make it better, or different. And no other currency is actually socketable. You can't put stuff into the currency, you just use it. But in this case, there are these things called resonators, which have an effect, and then these things called fossils, which you actually socket into the resonators. And in order to use one of the resonators, you have to have all of its sockets completely filled with fossils. And what resonators do is either change a white normal item into a yellow rare item and put a bunch of new stuff on it, which is what an Orb of Alchemy also does, or they upgrade a currently rare item with new stats, basically re-roll it, which is what a Chaos Orb does. But in this case, you actually have the chance to fine-tune what they do by using fossils, because normally items like the Chaos Orb and the Orb of Alchemy are completely random in what they actually will do. But the fossils have all sorts of various sort of modifiers and specific ways to alter the product of what you're actually going to get. Things like if you use a frozen fossil, you'll get cold modifiers on whatever you use it on. So if you use it on a weapon, you'll probably get like it adds cold damage to your attacks or cold damage to spells or something like that. And it also prevents any fire modifiers from being on it. So you can find different combinations of fossils to actually fine-tune what you're going to get, which is pretty cool, actually. It's never been done like that before in PoE, so it's neat to have something that is kind of fighting the RNG, you could say, by collecting specific combinations of things that are able to give you specific results that you may want, and try from there. There are 1, 2, 3, and I think 4 socket resonators, and lots of different types of fossils that you'll find down here, and also Nico sells some of them for Azurite. And as you can see there, some of the events underground for actually getting to new nodes are pretty cool. They're pretty creative and interesting little fights. That one was like a Necromancer-themed fight where all of the souls of the enemies that you killed just jumped out of them right to where you are like a big soul mortar and exploded, so you had to be on your toes a lot during that one, and make sure not to stand still the entire time unless you could tank all that damage. And then an actual Necromancer enemy will come up, and that is the sort of finishing touch to the, I suppose, event itself. And that allows you to complete it and unlock everything around it, which is, it's a neat way to do things. It makes the exploration down here interesting and fun and not monotonous, and allows you to find lots of different events that maybe you haven't seen before, because there are so many, and some of them are specific to different biomes, therefore giving you a reason to continue to explore outward. And it's really pretty neat. I really like the Delve content, actually. If you want to get in on it, it's still going to be going on for a while now. I think it ends, let's see, the Delve League ends, the 26th of November, I believe. And that will allow you to still play for over a month at the time of recording this and see what you can get, because it's a lot of fun. And I fully expect the Delve content to actually end up in the base game onward quite soon, because they've obviously put a lot of care and attention into this, and there's a significant amount of content here, and it would be a real shame if it was just all temporary. I genuinely don't think that it will be. I think in a couple of months we'll see its return on a more permanent basis. And yeah, there's just a lot to do down here and a lot to get. It's a nice, I suppose, diversion. It's a diversionary side activity from your normal exploration. You'll occasionally find that soul fight up when you're exploring elsewhere in the main game, and then you'll have enough to come down here and do some quick side excursions and maybe get some cool loot for it. Also, I will say that that rope that's being laid down by the crawler there, you probably noticed that every time a event is actually completed, that rope, the anchor points on it actually light up and provide a string of light back between every node that you visited, and it's safe light for you to actually travel along without getting murdered by the Grue, and is also pretty dim, but you know, that's because side exploration is actually really important. Carrying flares and dynamite with you to go through the mines on your own and not just following the crawler at all times is very important, and there's a lot of stuff to be found there, including secret breakable walls that lead to new places that you can only get to by finding those walls and breaking them with dynamite. And also I like how the crawler slows down when you get behind it and eventually stops, but speeds up when you get in front of it, so you don't have to worry about it being a real problem to keep up with, and only walking a specific pace. Also, things like if you use a Quicksilver flask or something like that to get a huge burst of speed for a minute, it can still keep up with you, so you don't have to worry about outrunning the light and dying. And I think overall the amount of effort that's been put into it, the new sockables, the new uniques that are only available down here and things like that, show that it's a pretty well-made little game mode that actually is definitely worth trying out and maybe coming back to Path of Exile for. So, thank you very much for watching. If you want to try this out, it is of course free to do so, and try not to disappear from the face of the earth. I'll see you guys next time.